We have this story from the Daily Beast. Loomer threatens to snitch on conservatives criticizing Trump in raging MAGA civil war. The MAGA conspiracy theorist declared herself the president's loyalty enforcer. I got to hand it to Laura Loomer. She has done some of the, massive breaking stories in the Trump administration. She's even uncovered people who have been leaking. I think that's what would happen. We've had conversations here at Timcast quite a bit where we're actually she's got access and she's breaking big stories. So I'm curious, her position on Trump, Israel, Iran, the war, as well as she recently put out a statement about Tucker Carlson and Qatar. Now, she says Tucker received money from Qatar for an interview with their premier. I don't know if that's correct. It looks like a firm received the money to try and set the interview up. But let's jump into the call with Laura, and I'm really interested in hearing her insights on, as a staunch Trump supporter, what is the current position for whether Trump wants to go to war or not? So we're pulling this in now. Let me see if I can get it all up and running. And it is loading up, and Laura is here. Can you hear me, Laura Loomer?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. What's going on?
Thanks. Sorry, my earpiece was malfunctioning there for a second. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
There's a story in the Daily Beast saying that you're threatening to snitch on conservatives in this MAGA civil war over support for Trump I got a bug flying around, in what's going on with Israel and Iran. I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, as probably Trump's biggest supporter, what is your view on the Israel-Iran conflict as to whether or not we should or should not be involved militaristically?
Well, I've never advocated for troops on the ground in Iran. I've never advocated for war with Iran. But what's really concerning to me, Tim, and what is confusing and perplexing, and is at the focus of this whole debate that's erupted online, is people's sudden displeasure with President Trump over a policy that has defined President Trump and his campaign since the inception of his campaign 10 years ago, exactly to the date, 2 days ago or 3 days ago. And so this isn't something that has caught people by surprise. President Trump has always stated, since before even announcing his run for president in June of 2015, that he was against Iran ever having access to a nuclear weapon. He has always been critical of the Iranian nuclear deal, JCPOA, under the Obama administration. And in fact, this is what really created the major conflict and the rift between Barack Hussein Obama and Donald Trump that led to Barack Hussein Obama mocking Donald Trump at the White House Correspondents' Center, his constant attacks over Obama's handling of Iran that led to Donald Trump then deciding he was going to prove Obama wrong when he mocked him and his possible plans to run for president. So the problem here is this is what happens when you have coalition building. And this is why it doesn't ever work. During the campaign, everybody was so gung-ho about, inviting people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK into the party. And they said it was going to be great and that we needed to expand the tent. But the reality is, Tim, when you expand the tent, you have unrealistic expectations and you cater to people that have never really ideologically been aligned with the MAGA movement. And then those people come in and they try to hijack the MAGA movement for what they want it to be, as opposed to supporting the man and the vision that is MAGA and America first. And so we're witnessing a hostile takeover of the Trump administration, in my opinion, by individuals in the Democrat Party who are now trying to LARP as MAGA, right? A lot of these people that are some of the biggest critics online, they came out of nowhere during the last campaign season. They have very astroturf social media followings. Some of these people may or may not be being paid by foreign governments like Qatar, like Iran. We have seen that there are lobbyists that are now being paid, right? One of these lobbyists is a group called Luminate Advisors that is being paid to orchestrate interviews with the Prime Minister of Qatar and people like Tucker Carlson. So there's a lot of actual propaganda on behalf of Islamic regimes out there that is intended to undermine President Trump and his foreign policy. And I think it's important that we be honest about who's been here since the beginning, what President Trump's message has been since the beginning, and who's financing this opposition to Donald Trump.
It's interesting. It's true. There was a video. Someone mentioned this clip where Trump said back in the 80s, like one of his first political statements was, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And it was in relation to the hostage crisis. And there's compilation video someone made, 16 minutes of Trump saying Iran will never get a nuclear weapon. He won't allow it. And I wonder if there's a distinction, though, between people who are concerned about intervention in Iran and boots on the ground, and then and a difference between obstructing what Trump is trying to do. So I know you mentioned Tucker Carlson. He's kind of been the biggest voice in opposition to getting involved in this conflict. But I haven't seen everything he said in the matter other than he said Trump was complicit in this war, which is, it's kind of a bold thing to accuse Trump of doing when Trump was negotiating peace. And even Tucker said that this is really fascinating. Tucker said in his interview, I believe, with Ted Cruz, and he had another statement, I can't remember what it was with, that the Trump administration was negotiating in good faith with Iran, and that the Trump administration was not working on these strikes. But then he also tweeted that Trump was complicit in the war. That seems contradictory. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that everything about Tucker Carlson is completely fake. This is a guy who has been able to capitalize off of raw meat, right? Red meat talking points to the MAGA base. This is a guy who has been able to LARP as a Trump supporter and LARP as a mouthpiece for the so-called America First movement while he's been entirely against President Trump from the beginning. And it's important for people to hold these mouthpieces accountable for their actual statements. For example, in the aftermath of the stolen election in 2020, what did Tucker Carlson do, right? He was texting with his producer, Alex Pfeiffer, who is now working inside the Trump administration, ironically, talking about how Donald Trump supporters are a bunch of cousin fuckers and they're a bunch of terrorists, right? And you can pull this up. I think that it's really important. And it's one of the things that I actually admire about your show, Tim, is that you do live fact checking and you pull it up on your screen and you let people see it in real time. And so it's important for people to see that Tucker Carlson stated in his text messages to his own producer that he profusely hated Donald Trump. He hates Trump. And it wasn't until he was actually fired by Fox News that he was like, holy shit, Donald Trump could kill my career with the Single Truth Social post. And he decided to come groveling back and say that he's always been in support of President Trump. He's always supported Donald Trump. He loves Donald Trump, right? But that's a really stark contrast from then your text messages calling his supporters a bunch of cousin fuckers and terrorists and saying that Donald Trump should be held accountable for January 6th and saying that you hate Donald Trump. And so there's a lot of this this sense of urgency, right, with the shifting media landscape, Tim, where a lot of people are finding that they're not really welcome in mainstream media anymore. It's kind of a dying breed of journalism. People are monetizing a lot more in independent media. And if you feel that the MAGA base is going to turn on you, or you feel that Donald Trump could torpedo your entire career with a single post, you know, what's going to stop you from shape-shifting or pretending to be someone that you're not in order to maintain your audience and be able to pay your bills? And that's what Tucker Carlson is doing, in my opinion. And there's many clips that you can show from Tucker Carlson years ago. There was an article written in The Atlantic. Not that The Atlantic is a trustworthy source, but they're quoting Tucker's own words in which he said, I believe that Iran needs to be annihilated. I believe that we need to, overthrow these mullahs. I believe that the Ayatollah needs to be taken out. He said these things. You can go play the clips. There was a 16-minute long compilation that was being shared on X yesterday of all the times that Tucker Carlson has talked about how Iran is a threat to Western civilization. Iran is an Islamic supremacist regime. The Ayatollahs need to be taken out. The Iranian people should implement their own regime change and overthrow the Ayatollahs. So why is Tucker Carlson all of a sudden changing his views on this? Why are people in MAGA, why did they cheer when Donald Trump had airstrikes conducted on Qasem Soleimani, an Iranian terrorist? Why did people in MAGA cheer when Donald Trump did airstrikes on al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS? And they said, oh, it's so funny. Donald Trump said he died like a dog. This is so based. I love Donald Trump. How is that any different than Donald Trump talking about, premeditated or preemptive airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities or potentially bunker busting the Ayatollah himself?
This is interesting. It seems like there's been a shift over the past several years among many prominent personalities who were saying that they were conservative or Trump supporting. There's a bit of a distinction, I suppose, but I largely agree with you. I think Soleimani was in Iraq at the time. Minor difference, I suppose. When Trump said,
"What's the difference, though?" I thought they're trying to say that an airstrike is a full blown declaration of war. So are they saying that we reignited war in Iraq? Are they saying that we reignited war in Syria? They say that Donald Trump is the president of no new wars. So how can you say that Donald Trump is the president of no new wars, which I agree with, and say that the airstrikes on Qasem Soleimani and the airstrikes conducted on al-Baghdadi and ISIS leaders wasn't a new war in the Middle East, but then you're trying to say the airstrikes on possible. And look, the United States hasn't even gotten involved yet, right? The United States hasn't even conducted airstrikes. So they're trying to undermine Donald Trump. Some people like Dave Smith went as far, and he's buddies with Tucker Carlson. Tucker thinks he's amazing. Dave Smith went as far as calling for Donald Trump to be impeached. Impeached over what?
Yeah.
Donald Trump hasn't gotten involved in the conflict of in Iran. He has always been consistent in saying that we need to make sure that Iran does not have access to a nuclear weapon. He has instructed Tom Homan and Kirsty Noem over at DHS to secure our borders and to work with Kash Patel, our new FBI director, and to work with Dan Bongino to identify or try to locate some of these 2 million gotaways that came in under Biden's administration, open borders. Many of those 2 million individuals are Iranian proxies. They are Iranian proxies and Hamas and Hezbollah who want to hide, in the shadows. They deliberately took steps to not be detected so that they could get into our country and create their own sleeper cells, probably for the sake of being activated by the Ayatollahs, by the Iranian regime, and attacking the United States in another 9/11 style attack. I just had Tom Homan on my show last week, and he said it's his belief that majority of those individuals are Islamic jihadists. And it's his greatest fear that keeps him awake at night is the fact that we have Hamas and Hezbollah terror cells in all 50 states in our country who are plotting, who could be activated at any moment to kill Americans.
I think a really great point you made, something I noticed, Trump hasn't even done anything yet, right? We haven't even
done anything.
We've seen some refueling tankers be repositioned across Europe. I'm hoping that Trump is pulling the big ask. It looks daunting to Iran. Trump is making all these moves, but he's not done anything. But I'm seeing all this attacks like Dave Smith calling for the impeachment of Trump. Trump hasn't done anything. Or Tucker saying that Trump's complicit in this war. And I'm like, guys, I got liberals tweeting at me saying, did you vote for this, Tim? And I'm like, but Trump is not Israel. Israel launched the strikes.
Right. So, but let me focus on what you just said, too. Isn't it kind of ironic how, and I'm America first. I'm pro-Israel, but I'm not asking for us to get involved in this conflict between Israel and Iran. You can be pro-Israel and be America first. This notion that you cannot support Israel or you have to be completely anti-Israel or foaming at the mouth over Jewish conspiracies, that's what you called it, Israel derangement syndrome. Oh, yeah. There is serious Israel derangement syndrome that has taken over many mainstream elements within the GOP. And it crosses foreign policy disagreements. I'm not saying that you're an anti-Semite if you are critical of Israel. You can be critical of Israel all you want. You are not an anti-Semite if you are critical of AIPAC. I've been critical of AIPAC. I mean, honestly, AIPAC campaigned against me. And I am a pro-Israel Jewish Republican woman, right? So I don't understand why they campaigned against me, but they did. So you can be against the ADL and not be an anti-Semite. But when you start cheering for Iran to nuke Israel, when you start cheering for Iran to win this conflict simply because you have an irrational hatred for Israel, that's where we start crossing over into the line of blatant Jew hatred. And a lot of these people hate Jews. They don't want to admit it. They do. I'm not saying everyone who's a critic of Israel is a Jew hater, but a lot of the people who have large followings online want an excuse to blame Israel for everything. And they're trying to say that our country is going to be destroyed and Donald Trump's presidency is going to be destroyed because of Israel. Well, if we're America first, why are you trying to control the actions of Israel? If you're truly America first, shouldn't you be okay with Israel finishing the job in Gaza? Shouldn't you be okay with Israel bombing Gaza? Shouldn't you be okay with Israel striking Iran and perhaps assassinating the supreme leader of Iran? Isn't that America First policy, to let other countries handle their own political and global affairs? It seems like these people really aren't America First, because if they were America First, they wouldn't be trying to dictate what Israel does. Go let Israel bomb Gaza. Go let Israel bomb Iran. What does that have to do with the United States of America?
I agree. I call them Israel first, rather derisively, because it seems like they're more concerned about the foreign policy pertaining to Israel than America's own borders or the terror cells that may have come across the southern border. So people come to me, and with all due respect to these people, you know, whatever respect may be due, you're allowed, like you said, criticize Israel all day, whatever. You're allowed to do that.
Do it, yeah.
My issue was they would criticize Israel when we're talking about Ukraine or we're talking about southern border. And I said, if you care more about Israel's policies instead of our southern border and what Trump is doing and what the Democrats want to do, I think you firstly care about Israel. That being said, I do want to bring up something. You had a series of tweets about Tucker. You mentioned Illuminate, but your tweets insinuate Tucker was paid himself $200,000. It appears from the FARA forms that Illuminate was paid $200,000, not Tucker. I don't know if you had a clarification on that or what. Look,
I think that everybody in conservative media, yourself included, knows how this process works, Tim. And I think that we all are aware of the fact that there are lobbyists and there are influencer companies and there are lobbyists who serve as intermediaries between pundits, between politicians and social media influencers for the sake of either transferring funds or initiating interviews that are supposed to look kosher, but are really at the end of the day not so kosher. And so regardless, Tucker Carlson, whether you want to say that the money went to Tucker or not, right? We haven't seen any of their bank statements. Why don't they open up their accounts? Why don't they show us who paid for Tucker Carlson's hotel rooms and his travel for him and his staff to Qatar? Because somebody paid for it. And if you look at the contract that I uncovered from Illuminate, which is available in FARA, you can clearly see that per their contract, it says that the consultant needs to be present for all of the interviews. So the Illuminate representative was clearly present for all of the interviews. They list their point of contact as Tucker Carlson himself. They don't list Neil Patel of Tucker Carlson Network. They don't list any of Tucker Carlson's staff or his producers or some media affairs person. They actually list Tucker Carlson himself as the point of contact between the lobbyist and the Prime Minister of Qatar, Al Thani, who wanted this interview for the sake of placing Qatari propaganda on Tucker Carlson's show as it related to discussing war with Iran and how Qatar is not involved or they're trying to stop the war, when we know that's a lie. We already know that Qatar is one of the biggest sponsors of Islamic terrorism in the world. This is why I was so outspoken when President Trump went to Qatar. And some people were like, oh, why are you so outspoken about this? Because we need to be honest about what these countries are doing. They shouldn't just be allowed to wine and dine everybody and, you know, show up with Rolexes and show up with planes and, you know, write checks and sponsor galas and throw their Arab money around. And then everybody turn a blind eye to the fact that they are literally housing the leaders of Hamas in Doha, where they let them live in luxurious penthouses and they let them go on shopping sprees and evade airstrikes. They're literally hiding out in Qatar to protect these people from being killed by Mossad or killed by the IDF. That's why they allow them to have a safe haven in Qatar. Those people are killing Americans. There's a reason why Donald Trump killed Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani murdered U.S. soldiers. He murdered U.S. military members. And Qatar finances those same Iranian proxies and Hamas and Hezbollah, and they are involved in the same terrorist activities that the Iranian regime is involved in not just attacking Israel, but also attacking Western civilization and killing Americans. They're also the largest funders of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood, which should be designated as a terrorist organization. In fact, the Muslim Brotherhood is designated as a terrorist organization in places like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, don't you think that we should be taking the advice, heeding the advice of these Muslims who President Trump is meeting with? If they tell us that somebody is a terrorist, that is why the Saudis cut off relations with Qatar for such a long time, because they are funding Hamas, they are funding Hezbollah, and they are funding the Muslim Brotherhood, which is designated as a terrorist organization in many countries, including Jordan.
I want to ask you, though, all of these personalities that seem to have shifted in the past couple of years towards an Israel critical view. It seemed there seems to be some kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, like a movement, but many personalities have adopted this strong position recently. You mentioned that there's this Luminate. They're making points of contact with Tucker. They're connecting these interviews. They're making these things happen. Do you think there's a concerted effort from foreign influences to get conservatives to be anti-Israel or?
Absolutely. We already know that China gets a lot of their oil from Iran. Xi Jinping just said that he's going to be sending military equipment to Iran. He's already expressed that he's very anti-Israel. You want to take a guess as to who the two largest donors of foreign money to American universities and institutions over the last 4 years in our country have been? Just take a guess. The two countries.
I'd say China, Qatar.
China and Qatar. So between 2021 and 2024, China and Qatar, okay, and there's some other countries, but the bulk of these funds have come from China and Qatar. $29 billion in foreign money has made its way into American institutions and mostly American universities between 2021 and 2024. That's foreign money. Most of that money coming from Qatar and China. And so why do we see all of these pro-Palestinian and it's not just pro-Palestinian, it's pro-Hamas, it's pro-Islamic Jihad. Okay, they have found that some of these students, and I've covered some of these protests on campuses as well, are waving Hamas flags. They're wearing Al-Quds flags. They're wearing Hamas bandanas. They're waving Hezbollah flags. I was physically assaulted on the streets of New York City when I was reporting on the Columbia protests by a woman who was wearing a Hamas bandana while carrying a Hezbollah flag. She shoved the flag in my face. She tried to poke my eyeball out with a Hezbollah flag. And so the reality is that a lot of the destabilization in our country and a lot of the anti-Trump movement, it doesn't matter if the Qataris say, oh, President Trump, thank you so much for being the first president to ever come to Qatar. You're so amazing. Let's roll out the camels and the horses and throw this whole big spectacle together for you and your staff. And, oh, we're going to put you up in the St. Regis. It's a 5-star hotel. We're going to treat you like a king. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they say and what they do, because what people need to understand is that in Islam, there's this concept of permissible lying. There's this concept of taqiyya in which Muslims are permitted to lie to non-Muslims for the sake of advancing the goals and the causes of Islam. And we know that Qatar is funding the Muslim Brotherhood. They're funding all of the jihadist organizations here in America that are assaulting Jewish students on campus. It's not just Jews either. This is not a Jewish issue. This is an issue of Western civilization. And if the Christians and the Christian nationalists and the Catholics think that this is like a case of, the crocodile is going to eat me last, you are sorely mistaken. What starts with the Jews doesn't end with the Jews. And people need to stop framing this issue of Islamic subversion and Islamic infiltration of our country and the use of Islamic and Chinese money. We know that the Iranians and the Chinese are working together to undermine the Trump administration. This is a concerted effort to topple Western civilization. So you can post your little edgy tweets about how, oh, it's Hasbara, right? Let's deport the Jews to Israel. You can post all that stuff all you want, but at the end of the day, you're going to find yourself getting on your knees, and some Muslim is going to have a gun to your head, and they're going to say, convert or die. And you're just going to have to look back and admit that I'm not saying you, but the people that are engaged in this propaganda and these foreign influence campaigns played a role in the end of Western civilization, played a role in their own demise.
Do you think that these personalities are getting paid directly by Qatar or lobbying groups?
I think that they're using lobbyist groups and cutouts. I mean, look, there's a lot of ways to funnel money to somebody, okay, to have it off the books. You could have intermediaries who themselves are paid by foreign governments, and then they themselves can pay people through shell companies. They can pay them through LLCs. They can pay them through crypto. We already know that and I'm not anti-crypto, but we do know that a lot of these Islamic regimes are using crypto to funnel money to social media influencers. The DOJ has already identified this, and it's not just Islamic countries too. It's Russia. There's all types of countries that are involved. And I know you found yourself at the center of, stories attacking you, accusing you of taking foreign money. And so, right? I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying, right, from the attacks that you yourself were subjected to, that there are foreign influence campaigns that either are paying certain people or they're trying to target certain conservatives to to either get them to be mouthpieces under the guise of news, under the guise of podcasting, under the guise of communication. But it's a lot more sinister than that.
You know, I'll tell you something. One of the tricks they use on YouTube when you run ads, I've been talking to people this for a long time. You can choose to run ads on a targeted channel. So you can go to Google Ads and you can say, I want to put $10,000 in an ad spend on this one channel only. And what that means is you're outbidding all the other advertisers to appear on that channel. You're effectively giving that money to that channel's operator. So when we talk about foreign influence operations, they usually have these circuitous stories. The one involving me, for instance, I would never personally accept money. My business would never accept money, and I wouldn't go anywhere near money that was intended to impugn my honor or manipulate my opinions in any way. That being said, what these countries can do and lobbying groups can do is they can find someone. Let's say what interests me about this is the sudden change over the past few years of opinion on these issues. What happens is I've been talking about this for a while. There are some creators who I will just not name. I don't want to start drama. I want to explain the issue. They'll talk about, let's say, cooking. It's a kitchen cooking show. But then they end up making one video about Israel-Palestine because it's prominent in the news, and then they get 1 million views. And they say, wow. The next thing you know, they make another video about it. A month later, the only thing they're doing is talking about Israel, and they're usually critical of it. What happens is,
or they go on a nice little trip and they go to Dubai, or they go to Qatar, and they're getting paid cash.
But that's the overt, right? So some people do go. But what I'm saying is there's this subversive element where I've noticed channels on YouTube where they used to be about fitness and health, but now all they talk about is why Israel is bad because they're making money doing it. They said, I was getting 10,000 views on my sandwich videos, but I get 50,000 if I talk about Israel. And it's simple enough for any country to go onto Google and just say, I want to give them money for these specific videos. And that you're basically in it. These people don't realize what's happening, but that's a really easy way to run these influence operations.
Another way for them to run these influence operations too is to subscribe to people on X. And look, I think that Elon Musk and X should take into account the fact that there's a lot of people, and they did address this. They had a lot of botting activity out of India, right, where people were trying to game the system on monetization, and they were creating these reply bots so that they could make money off of the X revenue system. But there's also a lot of actual terrorist activity where you have jihadists that are subscribing to accounts, people like Jackson Hinkle, for example, who went from having a couple 100,000 followers to having over 3 million followers online. And most of his comments are from Iranians, supporters of the Houthis, supporters of Hezbollah, supporters of Hamas. He's literally living in Moscow, Russia, where he is lobbying, I'm told, for Russia as a United States citizen, speaking at Houthi rallies, speaking at Nasrallah's funeral, openly tweeting his support of Xi Jinping, tweeting his support of Nicolas Maduro.
Jeez.
Stuff like that is happening too, where a lot of people are able to funnel money through subscriptions, whether it's, on X or whether it's any other subscription-based platform, because that's another way to evade FARA. What's to say, right? There's just some random account that wants to subscribe to you. Well, what's stopping them from subscribing? What's stopping them from subscribing to you for $7 a month or however much your monthly amount is? You can set it to whatever you want to be. Mine is set at $7 a month, but if I wanted to, I could set it for $100 a month or $1,000 a month, right? What about some of these people that have over 1,000 subscribers and they're setting theirs at $100 a month? That money all adds up over time. And if you have multiple accounts and you're trying to evade the terms of service, that's another way that people are getting funded by foreign money and evading FARA. And so just because it's not listed in FARA, or just because a lobbying firm is listed as the main receiver of the funds, doesn't mean that lobbying firm, or it doesn't mean that a third party entity that doesn't have to abide by FARA. The person that has to abide by FARA is the person that is receiving the money directly from the foreign source. They could take that money and put it into an LLC and transfer it to 50 different influencers or one influencer. And that's what people need to understand.
I think you bring up a really great point about just foreign influence in general on any of these issues. And so when people bring up the issue of what's going on with Israel, Iran, I think this is just another example. But we are out of time. Where can people find you if they want to watch more?
So people can follow me on X at Laura Loomer and on X at Loomer Unleashed. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, I have a show on Rumble called Loomer Unleashed, rumble.com/Laura Loomer. You can subscribe to my channel. I'll be going live tonight and discussing this extensively as well. And if you're interested in seeing how President Trump has been consistent on the issue of Iran, we're going to be going through about 100 examples on my show tonight. And we're going to be showing all the receipts in case you find yourself to be a victim of some of this foreign influence propaganda. So I encourage you all to tune in tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, rumble.com/Laura Loomer.
Laura,
thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. All right, let's see. Oh, wrong one. There we go. That was Laura Loomer. And, it's interesting. She's obviously pro-Trump more than anything else. She, I looked into the Tucker Carlson thing, and it does not look, and I brought this up several times, that he got paid by this. It is interesting, however, if he is coordinating directly with a lobbying firm registered under FARA that is intended, I don't know. It makes me question. There are a lot of people that seemingly have recently adopted I don't know what the right way to put it, strong anti-Israel stance in a short amount of time. Far be it from me to tell you about people's intent or what they know and what they don't know. It could just be that people learned things and they said, you know what, I've changed my opinion on this, and I can respect that. I think in general, the idea of influence operations is broad and it's more than just this one issue. But we are out of time. And there's a frog. There's a frog right over there. It's climbing on the walls. And I don't know how it got in this building. I have questions. We're going to get this party moving along. I believe we've got Russell Brand coming up right now. So we will send that raid over to Russell. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Thank you all so much for hanging out. We're back at 8 p.m. for Timcast IRL. You got to come. It's going to be epic. We'll see you all then.